Welcome to the Retirement Wealth Podcast. Today, we're diving into a topic that affects many people planning for retirement, and that's how to plan for retirement with irregular income.
Yeah, it's a real concern for a lot of folks, especially those who might be freelancers, entrepreneurs, or even retirees who might have variable income streams.
Exactly. And, planning for retirement is challenging enough without the added complexity of irregular income.
Right, it can feel overwhelming. But the good news is, there are strategies that can help create a more stable financial future, even when income isn't consistent.
We'll be discussing some key points today, like how to build a flexible budget, the importance of an emergency fund, and ways to optimize your investments when you have fluctuating income.
And we'll also talk about how to approach Social Security and other benefits, which can be a little tricky with irregular income.
Absolutely. So whether you're nearing retirement or already enjoying it, there's something here for everyone.
Remember, planning ahead can really make a difference. So let's get into it.
Yes, let's jump right in. First up, let's talk about building that flexible budget.
So, Emily, the landscape for planning retirement with irregular income is really changing right now, and it's important for folks to understand why.
Right, and I think one big factor is the current economic climate. With inflation, it's like every time we go to the store, prices seem to have jumped again, right?
Absolutely, and that's really affecting purchasing power. It's not just about having enough saved. It's about how much that money will actually buy you in the future.
Yeah, I spoke with a couple recently. They're both in their early 60s, and they're planning to retire soon. But they told me how their retirement timeline has been seriously impacted by rising costs.
That's a great example. A lot of people are feeling that pinch. If you're relying on fixed income or irregular income, you need to factor in how inflation can erode your savings over time.
Exactly. And then there's market volatility. One day the market's up, the next it's down. It can really shake your confidence when you're trying to figure out how to draw from those investments.
Right, and for those who are nearing retirement or are already retired, that can be particularly stressful. If you're withdrawing from your accounts during a downturn, you're not just losing value, but your future withdrawals can also shrink significantly.
I remember talking to a retiree who had to adjust his spending habits because of this. He was drawing from his investments when the market was down, and it really impacted his ability to travel, which was a big part of his retirement plan.
That's a perfect example of why you need a strategy. And let's not forget about tax efficiency. With changing tax laws, it's crucial to ensure that your withdrawals are as tax efficient as possible.
Right. No one wants to be surprised with a hefty tax bill in retirement.
Exactly. And with the potential changes to Social Security on the horizon, it's something people need to think about. It's a major source of income for many retirees.
For sure. I read an article recently that projected how some benefits might be cut if the fund runs out, which is, alarming.
It is, and that's where planning comes in. You can't just rely on Social Security alone. You need to have other income streams, especially if those benefits are reduced.
And then healthcare costs. They just seem to keep climbing, don't they?
Yes, they do. Many retirees underestimate what they'll spend on healthcare in retirement. A recent study showed that a couple at age 65 could expect to pay over $300,000 in out-of-pocket health expenses throughout retirement.
Wow, that's a staggering number.
It really is, and it's critical for people to factor that into their retirement planning. Those irregular income streams can make it even trickier. You want to ensure you're covered for those unexpected medical expenses.
Yeah, it's like a balancing act. And then there's the emotional side of things, too.
Absolutely. The peace of mind that comes from knowing you have a plan in place is invaluable. Retirement should be a time for enjoying life, not stressing over finances.
I think that's a huge point. People don't realize how much emotional well-being is tied to financial security.
Exactly. I've seen clients who, once they have a solid plan, their whole demeanor changes. They start to relax and actually enjoy their retirement years instead of worrying about money.
And legacy planning can come into play too. People want to leave something behind for their kids or grandkids, but if you haven't planned for it, it can create more stress in your retirement years.
Right. If you don't have a clear income strategy, it's hard to figure out how much you can afford to leave behind.
So all of these factors really emphasize the need for a tailored approach to retirement planning, especially now.
Definitely. With everything going on in the economy, it's more crucial than ever to have a plan that accounts for these variables.
I feel like we've highlighted a lot of challenges, but there are also strategies to address these issues, right?
Yes, there are. It's about being proactive and adaptable. Let's dive into some core strategies that can help folks effectively plan for retirement with irregular income. So, Emily, when we talk about planning for retirement with an irregular income, one of the first things that comes to mind is really setting up a solid foundation, right?
Absolutely, David. And I think one of the best ways to do that is by diversifying income sources. Relying solely on one income stream can be risky, especially when you have fluctuations.
Exactly. So for instance, if you have a mix of investments like stocks and bonds, along with some real estate, it can really cushion those irregular income months.
Right. And speaking of investments, I think it's important to touch on tax-advantaged accounts. Having a 401k or an IRA can make a big difference in retirement planning.
For sure. With a 401k, if your employer offers a match, that's basically free money. It's like a bonus every year you contribute. And then with traditional IRAs, you get the tax deduction now, which can help in those years when your income is a bit lower.
Yeah, and then there's the Roth IRA too, which is great because you pay taxes up front, but then your withdrawals in retirement are tax-free. So it's like a nice little cushion for later on.
Exactly. Those tax-free withdrawals can really help in managing your income, especially when you're trying to minimize tax impacts during retirement.
Speaking of managing income, what do you think about the withdrawal strategies? I know a lot of folks hear about the 4% rule.
The 4% rule. It's a classic guideline. Basically, it suggests that if you withdraw 4% of your retirement savings each year, you should be able to maintain your lifestyle for about 30 years without running out of money.
Right. But it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, is it? What if someone has a more irregular income?
Good point. In that case, you might want to look at a bucket strategy. Dividing your assets into different buckets based on when you'll need the money.
Like having a short-term bucket for immediate needs and then a long-term bucket for growth, right?
Exactly. So your short-term bucket might have cash or bonds, something stable that you can access without worrying about market fluctuations. And then your long-term bucket can be more aggressive, stocks, for example, because you're not going to touch that for a while.
That makes a lot of sense. And it can help reduce the stress of having to sell investments during a market downturn, which is crucial with irregular income.
Right. And along with that, it's important to think about asset allocation. How much you put into stocks versus bonds. A common rule of thumb is the 70-30 portfolio, 70% in stocks and 30% in bonds, for someone who's looking at a balanced approach.
Yeah, and that ratio can definitely shift as you get closer to retirement, right? Maybe you want to become more conservative as you approach those years.
Definitely. As you age, you might want to reduce risk so you can have a more stable income in retirement.
I love how all these strategies can work together. And speaking of income, Social Security optimization is another area where many people could really benefit from some planning.
Absolutely. Timing your Social Security benefits can make a huge difference. If you can wait until age 70 to claim, you can receive a much higher monthly benefit.
But not everyone can afford to wait that long, right? Some folks need that income sooner.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance and knowing your personal financial situation. There are calculators out there that can help determine the best claiming strategy based on your projected lifespan and financial needs.
And let's not forget about annuities. They can provide a steady income stream, which is especially helpful for those with irregular income.
Right. Annuities can be a solid option for creating a reliable paycheck in retirement. They come in different forms, but the idea is that you pay a lump sum up front, and then you get regular payments for a certain period or for the rest of your life.
Yeah, but they can be complex, and I think it's important to really understand the fees and terms before jumping in.
Absolutely. It's crucial to do your homework with annuities. And while they can provide stability, they might not be the best fit for everyone, especially if you have other strong income sources.
That's a great point. And what about tax savings techniques? I mean, with the regular income, it can be tricky to manage tax obligations.
For sure. One technique is to be strategic about when you withdraw from your retirement accounts. If you know you'll have a lower income year, it might be a good time to take a larger distribution from your tax-deferred accounts, like your 401k or traditional IRA, to minimize your overall tax bracket.
Right. And tax loss harvesting can be useful too, right? Selling off losing investments to offset gains elsewhere?
Exactly. It's a smart way to manage your tax liability. And then, of course, diversifying your investments helps spread out risk and can also have tax benefits, depending on the types of accounts you hold.
Wow, it's clear that there's a lot to consider when planning for retirement with irregular income. But it sounds like with the right strategies, it's definitely manageable.
Absolutely. It's all about creating a tailored plan that suits your unique situation and goals.
And now that we've covered those strategies, what do you think are some common pitfalls people might run into when navigating this kind of planning?
So one of the most common pitfalls we see, Emily, is what we call sequence of returns risk. It's when retirees face a market downturn early in their retirement, just as they're starting to withdraw money from their accounts.
Right, and that can really change the game, can't it? I mean, if you're relying on your investments to provide income, a downturn can have a lasting impact on your portfolio.
Exactly. Let's say someone retired in 2008. They were ready to start their new life, and then the market crashed. If they had to draw from their investments during that downturn, they were selling at a loss, which can significantly reduce the longevity of their savings.
That sounds so stressful. Are there ways to mitigate that risk?
Absolutely. One strategy is to have a cash reserve. That way, you can cover your expenses for a few years without having to sell investments during a downturn. This can help your portfolio recover when the market eventually rebounds.
That makes sense. How about another common mistake? I know a lot of people don't factor in taxes when they're planning their withdrawals.
Oh, definitely. Many retirees underestimate how much taxes can eat into their retirement income. For instance, if someone's taking withdrawals from a traditional IRA, those funds are taxed as ordinary income.
So if they're not planning for that, they could end up with less spendable income than they expected, right?
Exactly. I had a client who thought they had a comfortable retirement budget figured out. But when they started withdrawing, they realized their tax bracket had jumped, and they weren't accounting for that in their plans. They ended up needing to cut back on their spending.
Ouch! That's a tough lesson to learn. What can someone do to avoid that trap?
A good approach is to look at your tax situation comprehensively. Consider a mix of accounts, like Roth IRAs, which allow tax-free withdrawals, and understand how different withdrawals can impact your tax bracket.
Got it. What about healthcare costs? I know those can be a huge surprise for many retirees.
Absolutely. Many people underestimate healthcare expenses in retirement. A common statistic is that retirees can expect to spend around $300,000 on healthcare throughout their retirement, not including long-term care.
Wow, that's significant. So how does someone prepare for that?
Planning for healthcare should start early. Consider options like health savings accounts, HSAs, which can provide tax advantages. Also, exploring supplemental insurance can help cover gaps in Medicare.
That's really important. And what about longevity? Some folks might not think they'll live into their 90s, but they could end up needing those funds for a lot longer than they anticipated.
Exactly. I had a client, let's call her Susan, who retired at 65 thinking she'd be fine for the next 20 years. But she ended up living to 95. She hadn't planned for that kind of longevity, and it put a real strain on her finances later on.
So what's the takeaway here? How do we help people plan for a longer retirement?
It's crucial to build a financial plan that accounts for longevity. This might mean having a diversified investment strategy that can grow over time and provide income throughout retirement, even into your 90s.
Right, and speaking of investments, what about asset allocation? I know that's another area where mistakes can happen.
Yes, asset allocation is key. Many retirees become overly conservative too soon. They might move everything into bonds or cash, thinking they're being safe. But then they miss out on growth potential that stocks can provide.
That's a balancing act, isn't it? Finding the right mix of risk and security?
Exactly. A well-diversified portfolio that aligns with your risk tolerance and time horizon is essential. And remember, you might need to adjust that allocation as you age or as market conditions change.
So it's a matter of staying flexible and responsive, right?
Yes, and also being mindful of your personal circumstances. Like, I had a couple come in who were set on claiming Social Security at 62, thinking they'd get more money that way. But they didn't realize how much that would reduce their benefits for the rest of their lives.
Oh no, that's a common misconception, isn't it?
It really is. Waiting until full retirement age or even later can significantly increase their monthly benefits. It's worth running those numbers and considering the long-term impact.
So what should folks be looking for in their own plans to catch these red flags early?
Keep an eye on your withdrawal rates and how they align with your portfolio's performance. If you're withdrawing more than your investments are growing, that's a red flag. And regularly check in on your tax situation, healthcare costs, and whether your asset allocation still meets your needs as you age.
That sounds like a solid checklist. It's all about being proactive, isn't it?
Exactly. The sooner you can identify potential issues, the easier it is to make adjustments and ensure a comfortable retirement.
And for anyone who might feel overwhelmed, it's always a good idea to consult with a financial advisor to get personalized advice.
Absolutely. A financial planner can help you navigate these complexities and tailor a plan specifically for your situation.
So what are some next steps for listeners who want to ensure they're on the right track?
Start by reviewing your current retirement plan. Look at your expected income sources, expenses, and investment strategy. Then, consider setting up a meeting with a financial advisor to discuss your unique situation and potential adjustments.
That sounds like a great plan. All right, let's wrap this up and get our listeners thinking about their own retirement strategies.
So, now that we've talked about planning for retirement with a regular income, let's dive into some immediate steps people can take, right?
Absolutely. It's all about actionable steps, isn't it? What do you think is the first thing folks should consider?
Well, one of the most important things is to start by reviewing your current financial situation. You want to have a clear picture of your income sources, expenses, and any potential gaps. Tools like budgeting apps can help with that.
Right, and speaking of tools, there are some fantastic retirement calculators out there, like those from Vanguard or Fidelity. They can help you project how much you'll need and how your savings might grow over time.
Exactly. And if you're looking for something more hands-on, Schwab also offers great calculators. They can help you visualize different scenarios based on your irregular income.
That's super helpful. And for those who might be concerned about Social Security, SSA.gov is a treasure trove of information. You can estimate your benefits and see what your options are.
Absolutely. And don't forget about tax software. That's key for understanding how your income will be taxed in retirement. A good tax plan can really make a difference.
Yeah, and if someone is feeling a bit overwhelmed, they might want to consider using a financial planning app. These can help track your progress and remind you to adjust your plans as needed.
Just like any journey, retirement planning is ongoing. I always recommend that people review their portfolio at least quarterly. It's a good habit to get into.
That sounds manageable. And running retirement projections regularly can help too, right?
Definitely. You want to see how far you're on track to meet your goals, and adjusting as you go is crucial, especially with a regular income.
And for those who love reading or listening, there are some great books and podcasts out there focused on retirement planning.
For sure. The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins is a fantastic read. It breaks down complex ideas into simple strategies, especially around investing for retirement.
I love that one. And I'd also recommend checking out How to Money podcast. They cover a variety of financial topics, including retirement planning.
That's a great suggestion. There's so much information out there, and finding what resonates with you is important.
Absolutely. And you know, it's never too late to improve your plan. Even small changes can have a huge impact over time.
You're right, Emily. Just starting to track your expenses or setting up a budget can set the stage for long-term success.
And if someone feels stuck, reaching out to a financial advisor can really help clarify things. Getting personalized advice can make a big difference.
Yes, and it's important to remember that every step counts. Whether it's adjusting your savings rate or exploring new investment options, those changes can build momentum.
So it sounds like there's a lot people can do right now to set themselves up for a better retirement.
Exactly. And creating a roadmap with these tools and steps will empower folks to navigate their unique situations.
With all of this in mind, we're really setting the stage for a successful retirement journey.
Definitely. So those are some practical first steps. Now let's bring this all together. Well, Emily, as we wrap up our discussion on planning for retirement with irregular income, let's recap some of the key takeaways.
Yeah, absolutely. One major point is the importance of budgeting. Creating a flexible budget that adapts to those income fluctuations can really help manage expenses.
Right. And then there's the need to build an emergency fund. Having a cushion to fall back on during lean months is crucial for peace of mind. It gives you that safety net.
Definitely. And let's not forget about diversifying income streams. Whether it's part-time work, investments, or other sources, having multiple income avenues can really stabilize your financial situation.
Exactly, and planning for taxes is another big one. Understanding how irregular income affects your tax situation can help avoid surprises down the line.
And finally, staying flexible and reviewing your plan regularly is essential. Life changes, and so should your strategy. Being proactive can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. Remember, building and protecting your retirement wealth is a journey. It takes time, patience, and a bit of strategy, but you can absolutely do it.
And if you found today's episode helpful, we'd love for you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about your biggest takeaway or any questions you might have. Sharing this with someone who's planning for or already in retirement could really help them too.
Yes, please do. Your input really helps us create content that matters to you.
And next time, we'll dive into the bucket strategy for retirement income. It's a fascinating topic that can really change how you think about your retirement withdrawals.
So be sure to tune in for that.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you feel more empowered in planning your retirement journey.
Take care, everyone.
See you next time.